contenders. 7 rounds. The road to the Coke Series ends here.
Good evening, race fans, and welcome to Podium Esports coverage of the 4th race of the 2021 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series. Live tonight for the virtual Nashville Superspeedway in Lebanon, Tennessee. James Pike, the voice of Podium Esports, here alongside Josh Lee and Devin Henry. Ryan Bauer producing our shots this evening. Cameras is always provided by Dougie Beard. Gentlemen, when we hit halfway in tonight's race, we will also be halfway through this 2021 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series. And as we enter this point of the season, Josh Lee, we've seen some standouts like Donovan Strauss rise to the top. We've seen some standard names fall towards the back of the pack, and maybe a few surprises as well. Coming into tonight, there are 9 drivers that were in the 2021 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series that currently sit below the top 20 in points. So there are some familiar names they're going to have to start digging if they want to return to the Coke Series for next season.
And also talking about that, on the flip side, there's a lot of new faces who are above the cut line right now, who are trying to get either back into the Coke Series after not being in it in 2021, or trying to get into the Coke Series for the first time, who are finally being above that cut line. They still have a long way to go and a lot of nerves to deal with, as this is really going to be the catalyst race of who's going to stay above the cut line, who's going to have that momentum, and who's going to be fighting from the back.
And tonight we make our first ever stop to the Nashville Superspeedway. This circuit only joined iRacing's roster of tracks in June, and it was home of the All-Star race for the Coke Series this season with the next-gen cars, but it's never been featured in an official eNASCAR series. So a debut track this evening, a first time here this evening, and Devin Henry, that means we could see a few surprises. This is arguably the biggest wild card of the Contender Series campaign.
Exactly, because not only has no one raced here at this top level of the series in these kinds of cars, but these 40 have never also raced each other at a track like this. Everyone, I keep hearing it, it's Dover's big brother, because it's concrete and owned by the same people, and maybe because you can get into a mess coming off a turn 2 down the back straightaway, maybe we'll send some guys flipping. Maybe that's why it's Dover's big brother. But what I'm expecting to see tonight is the curiosity among these crew chiefs and also the drivers themselves. With fresh rubber on the inside, that's the way to go, shortest way around the track. But we've had so many long green flag runs in the series. Once we get a stretch going, how will these drivers adapt, change their cars, change their style? Are they staying on the bottom? Are they moving a lane up? How do you adapt in a race like this at a track that we just have not seen this combination run at before? That's what intrigues me the most here tonight.
And this is an intriguing combination as far as banking goes as well. We went to Homestead, and that had 20 degrees of banking, and we didn't really see a lot of racing up on the top crew. But Autoclone 2 weeks ago, they were bottom, top, middle, all over the place. So I wonder if Nashville maybe falls in the middle in that sense, just like it falls in the middle of the calendar that you see on your screens. Dover, Darlington, Texas, the next 3 weeks after this. And those 3 races combined with tonight's race will round out the calendar for 2021. Here's a look at the live point standings. Keister, Honeycutt, Bias, Reynolds, and Olot, your top 5 entering this evening. Drivers right near the bubble include Dylan Alt, Kyle Penno, Colin Bowden, Zach Nichols, and Brandon McKissick. Josh Lee.
And taking a look at a lot of those names in the top 20, I mentioned it, a lot of brand new faces. Donovan Strauss trying to get back up into the Coca-Cola iRacing Series. Parker Retzlaff trying to get there. Garrett Lowe trying to get back to that point. Same thing, Femi Olot, one of the top drivers currently of the drivers who were racing this season in the 2021 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. You look down past the top 20 and you start to see, like you mentioned, James, a lot of familiar names. Anthony Burrows is down there. Justin Bolton is down there. Blade Witt, Jordy Lopez Jr., Liam Brotherton, Jake Matheson. You got Daniel Eberhardt down there. Shearburn, Schoenberg, and more drivers going down into P40. Ashton Crowder right now way in the back, having to make multiple Hail Mary passes to get back up into the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series.
There are the point standings. Here's the track, courtesy of our friends of Google Earth. We're about 30 minutes to the east of downtown Nashville. Devin Henry at a track that's not quite a short track, but also not quite a mile and a half either.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to call it a short track. It's hard to call it an intermediate mile and a half because it isn't. 1 1/3 mile of a track here, and it's almost like some sort of a bowl. On the front straightaway, you have banking. On the corners, you have 14 degrees of banking. On the back straightaway, you're still almost turning that car to the right with 6 degrees of banking down the back. And this is almost like when you come into that bowl, when you try to make those moves on corner X or corner entry, it just makes it a little bit different. And of course, opening back in 2001, it's still somewhat new to the racing world. The surface isn't horrendous by any means either. So a lot of opportunities at this track to make the pass work.
Tonight we go for 167 laps, just over 223 miles, and 45 miles an hour down on pit road, about 65 to 66 laps your fuel window. So you're looking at 2 stops and maybe 3 if we get a green wine checker. 5 sets of tires available to these drivers in pits. Your pole record here for the cars of the NASCAR Xfinity Series, just over 166 miles an hour, set by David Stremme. Time to turn our attention to the starting grid and tell you where your favorite driver is beginning this evening. Donovan Strauss will pick up right where he left off 2 weeks ago, from Victory Lane and Auto Club to the pole here in Nashville with a 29.947 second lap. He'll start alongside Parker Retzlaff. Jake Nichols and Caden Honeycutt will roll off in the second row. Colin Keister will start the 5th spot. 6th of the grid belongs to Jordy Lopez.
Brian LaPrade, Taylor Hurst, pair of Lockdown Racing machines going to start on row 4. A pair of Dead Zone Racing drivers as well going to start on row 5 with Kyle Peddle and Derek Bordeaux. Chris Shearburn, Santiago Tira is going to round out the top 12.
P13 give it to Seth the Merchant alongside Blake Rentals. Ashton Crowder and Femi Olot make up row number 8. Derek Justice, Brendan McKissick, row number 9.
Cody Bias and Michael Cozy Jr. complete the top 20. Nicholas Shelton rolls off from the 21st, while Garrett Lowe starts to his outside. Zach Nichols and Malik Ray starting in 23rd and 24th.
Casey Tucker and Alan Bo's going to share that 13th row. Blade Witt, one of the drivers on the outside, looking in alongside Ryan Doucette, with Colin Bowden and Dylan Alt going to round out the top 30 on the racetrack.
Row 16 made up by Anthony Burrows and Jake Matheson. Liam Brotherton and Brian Mercurio alongside each other in row 17. Christian Pedersen in row 18 alongside Blake McCandless.
Daniel Everhart and Brad Davies completing the starting grid for tonight's race. Here's a look at the weather for this evening. Air temp in sim is 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Track temp 99 degrees Fahrenheit. The in sim time a little bit different now. When you move to the second half of the schedule, that's when you see those times change a little bit. And this season is no exception in the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series. So it's actually March 1st, 2022 on the calendar, right around 12:45 p.m. local time. It's Tuesday, right at the end of winter, beginning of spring in central Tennessee. Winds are heading to the north at 10 miles an hour and humidity of 44%. 360 kilometers will also go this evening, on top of that 260 plus mile range. For more information from pit road, before we go green flag racing, let's turn to our pit reporter for the first time this evening, Justin Prince.
Thank you very much, James. And for Donovan Strauss, it's been a very rough past 24 hours because he had been up all night with a sickness where he was throwing up throughout the evening to the point where he did not get any sleep. He's having a fever right at the time of this green flag of 101 degrees Fahrenheit. Spoke with him just after qualifying. He's still 75%. JD Laird, his spotter, has also mentioned they have peeled off the tape to help him keep cool in that car tonight, figuratively. There's a lot of confidence, though, that they can still get the job done despite him being under the weather.
Two words come to my mind, Evan Henry: flu game.
I mean, heck, his temperature right now is actually 2 degrees higher than the track temperature as we start here in Nashville. Hey, sometimes when you're in this kind of shape, it brings out the best in you, as you refer to the flu game for Michael Jordan.
I thought we'd have a basketball reference here at iRacing broadcast, but we'll turn our attention back to the stock cars as the green flag will come out, and we are underway with race number 4 of 7 in the 2021 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series for the virtual Nashville Superspeedway. Donovan Strauss in control in that first lap, and look how quickly this field has sorted out into single file racing. Everybody just about in the top 10, nose to tail, and you have to go all the way back to Santiago Gutierrez and Seth the Merchant fighting for 13th and 14th on the racetrack, Josh Lee, before you find cars door to door.
And here's one of the comparisons you can draw the Nashville Superspeedway to a short track. Everybody preferring that inside line. There is something to talk about when it comes to the middle and outside lines at this racetrack. They are usable, but at one of the top levels of eNASCAR competition, it becomes very difficult to make those lines work because you're honestly relying on drivers having worn tires or a worse car setup than you. So with everybody running the bottom right now, everybody feels pretty even with one another as we take a look at the new number 35 of Brian LaPrade.
Brian LaPrade, hometown driver from just outside of Lebanon and Manchester, Tennessee, and would love to have a good finish at his home racetrack. He's had a strong start to the season, currently scored in the 13th position in points, would be in the Coke Series if the season ended today. But of course, David Henry, long way to go, and a long way to go in this race as well.
And Briar had that Nashville t-shirt on too. You could feel the hometown feel. And for Briar LaPrade, you know that he comes here, he wants a good finish. He wants to show up that t-shirt here in the booth when this race is over. So for a guy like Briar, this is where you want to do good, not just because, well, you're only 16 points above the cut line, so a good finish is necessary, but you know, this is one of his favorite tracks. It's his home track. He wants to come out here, do well, show off himself, show off this track.
Keep an eye on him. Here's a look at Colin Keister, who's just ahead of Jordy Lopez Jr. And I would say you look at Lopez, has been one of the prevailing stories, and not in particular him, but the whole Logitech G Altus Esports operation just has not had pace in the first 3 races. All of their drivers currently below the cut line. Lopez faring better than most of them, but they need a big boost. They need to step it up, and that's going to have to change starting tonight if they want to have any shot of making the Coke Series by season's end.
And a good start for Jordy Lopez Jr. as well, which I think exactly what he needed. But talking about good starts for these drivers up at the front, James, top 10 completely unchanged from when we dropped the green flag just some odd 6 laps ago. Blake Reynolds, who sits P11, currently up 3 spots from where he initially started the race. The next 3 cars down from there, Shearburn, Tires, and DeMerchant, all lost 1 spot. And there is the famous Winston-Salem, North Carolina's Taylor Hurst lean as he goes down into the corner, straightens right back up for the straightaway, and is undoubtedly going to do the same in here into turn 3, and yes, he does.
Lean back, lean forth, lean back, lean forth. Twin Cities native working his way through the field and currently just sort of riding around in P8 at the moment, which is, from what I can tell, David, what most of our leaders are trying to do. I feel like we're seeing a lot of these strategies pan out very quickly, and this race no exception. Michael Cozy Jr. now we ride with from Hagerstown, Maryland. He currently just on the edge of the top 20 in 21st, looking for a way around Cody Bias, who in turn is trying to get around Brandon McKissick.
And Cozy wearing the number that won the first ever race here at Nashville Superspeedway, an ARCA race back in 2001 by Ken Schrader. So if superstition serves well, then Cozy might be able to jump his way through the field throughout this race. But with everyone just lined up single file, I think that the crews probably expected this, at least to an extent. So now you're communicating to your driver, based on the setup that you put in this car, hey, here's how hard that you can push this thing to make sure that you get the most out of your tire without burning it all up. We don't see anyone really creating massive gaps right now across this entire field. On board here with Colin Bowden, Space Station Gaming, And the Virginian here, look at how zoned in he is. Look at that. Like, you know what you need to do to open up this race. You set your tempo. You know where your tires are going to be. And for the crew right now, you're just jotting down your notes. How do I need to have this car set up as we get later into the race?
A little bit of a similarity to Brian Schoenberger, that he's certainly more up on the wheel than most drivers would be, is Bowden, but maybe a little bit more calm, cool, and collected in his case is Bowden, who is like a lot of other people trying to find some sort of speed, currently in 32nd at the moment. As you get a good look at the field coming underneath the flag stand to complete lap number 10, work their way towards lap number 11. Strauss still in control of this, but yeah, everybody running single file at this point, moving to Santiago Tours, originally out of El Paso, Texas, looking for a way somehow, some way around Chris Shearburn, and he is the first driver that is currently just on the edge of the top 20.
Following right behind Shearburn there, trying to get a little bit closer to that top 10 as they'll race back across the start-finish line. You can see Seth DeMerchant, that Logitech GLTC Sports Toyota Supra, also trying to get into the mix. There's Chris Shearburn, so close to making the playoffs in eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series competition in 2021, and unfortunately could not do it. It came down to points for him to work his way in and couldn't do it, and then unfortunately facing the relegation and is now fighting out of the Contender Series. But a good start for Chris Shearburn, trying to continue that and be right back where he was in 2021 in the Coca-Cola iRacing Series. But as they continue to run, James, everybody is still running that exact same line down the bottom, still running fairly single file, as we see a couple of drivers starting to make passes, but right now it's looking a lot like Martinsville. Everybody at the bottom, or I should say, more topical to what we've seen this season, more like Homestead was.
Not until you get back to Derek Justice and Fabiola. There's a side-by-side battle for position in 16th and 17th as we hide on board with Blake Reynolds, at least for the moment. But there's a good look. There are your two cars that were side-by-side for a moment, and then Ola and Justice there now in tow. And Justice jumps ahead of the fifth place man of the point standings, entering this evening and up into 16th.
And the biggest mover right now is actually Dylan Alt, and even though he's kind of outside the top 20, he's still working his way up as he's side by side with the number 44 machine of Zach Nichols. You know, the Sacramento kid, I've always wondered when it comes to big races like this. Most of these guys are out on the East Coast where it's 9:19 in the evening right now. For someone in Sacramento where, I mean, honestly, if I was racing like this, I'd have to, like, move my dinner time around, have to figure out a new time to eat and things like that. I've always wondered at this level of eNASCAR, does it matter or make a difference, or at least mentality-wise, being on the West Coast where the sun might even be setting right now, and then being on the East Coast where some people are going to bed, but Dylan Alt looks ready and prepared for low-line racing. He's the only guy who has moved up more than half a dozen positions in this race, but still a lot of work to do after his qualifying effort.
Good look out of the man out of Sacramento, California, who is just behind some side-by-side action, or at least a little bit. It seems like most of the battles that we've seen there side-by-side are right around that P15 to P20 range. You get a good look at some of the scenics here at Nashville. As the drivers continue to click off laps, let's go back down to pit road and head to Justin Prince. Justin.
Just so happens Dylan Alt is among those competitors, as well as Michael Cozy Jr. and several more that have been getting consistent and constant warnings when it comes to their temperatures, both oil and water temp wise. In regards to Dylan Alt's crew chief and Garrett Mashburn for tonight, he has been told to expect it to be a little bit hot in the traffic, though, with how this race is playing out. So don't be surprised, he essentially forwarded, if it blinks either of the gauges in the midst of the traffic. For Cozy Jr., keep in mind both the water and the oil temp have gotten high temperature warnings through his in-sim spotter. So many of these drivers are dealing with temp issues. They're starting to potentially drop, though, as this run goes on. Keep in mind, among some of the drivers, Blake McCandless actually peeled off tape in preparation for this.
And that's not particularly uncommon amongst a lot of drivers in this field, Josh Lee. We see a lot of them run tape levels that are high enough to push that temp just to the edge of what's comfortable in terms of temperatures. So you get a good look at Blake McCandless racing at Raleigh, North Carolina. But sometimes these drivers miss the mark, and maybe because this track is so new, because we haven't seen a lot of racing with these cars in packs like this, maybe it's not a huge shocker then that these drivers are struggling with water and oil temps a little bit more this week compared to some of the others, because again, the notebooks just aren't that big.
And they want to get all of the advantage of that added grill tape, mainly in the downforce area, with especially these Xfinity cars that are already extremely low on the downforce side of things. They want all the benefit of that grill tape without the consequence. So they're trying to get exactly where they possibly could be to barely run that engine right at the top of its operating window of temperature. They don't want any temperature warnings. They don't want that engine blowing up or taking any damage. So they go as far as they possibly can on that limit. And these setup builders, these drivers are masters of being right on that limit of almost being in trouble, but keeping it safe so they can get all of the benefits they possibly want.
Look at Anthony Burroughs out of St. Peters, Missouri, trying to make his Nexus esports machine go towards the front of this field. And he, one of the drivers who struggled a little bit, currently 25th in points, Devin, and trying to work his way back up towards the front of this field and back into the top 20 tonight.
And I gotta say, whenever you got fresh paint, the chrome always looks great. Hey, how about Malik Ray for Space Station Gaming looking to the inside here on Ryan Doucette? This is for the 25th position. Pushes up a little bit, and he's gonna lose a little bit of time there too. That is just how difficult it is to pass on the inside. The outside, I don't know if you want to pass there, is now behind him. Blade Witt will take a peek to the outside, but can't keep on that right rear quarter panel. When you get to the inside of someone here especially, the car has a tendency, especially with the aero, to start to push up track. And it just doesn't work because the rear end keeps going faster than the front of the car starts to slide on over. So we're going to see that as now Daniel Eberhard will take a look at Blade Witt. And Eberhard is another one of our big movers tonight, but again, kind of stuck back in the field. Once you're stuck under someone in the corner, it really makes the car loose and really wicked to drive as well. It's hard to make the pass in the first place. Defending it is almost easier, but you have to be at the right place, right time. How many times do we say that in sim racing?
How close are those drivers racing back at about 25th or so? Here's a look at Derek Bordeaux a little bit further up the field, but we had a really good battle there back for about 25th or so, which is about where the best racing is happening on track at the moment, just because, again, everybody's largely strung out and just trying to get to that first pit stop, maybe hit a fuel number here. You imagine with the way these pit stops line up, it could be very tight on two stops if you don't play your cards right. But Blade Witt, I've seen the last few laps, Jocelyn, he's been looking for opportunities to try and get around Malik Ray, try and make his way up towards the standings. And Malik Ray also now trying to duck underneath Ryan Doucette. But more importantly, these are all drivers that are near the bubble or on the bubble. Witt entered tonight in 28th, Ray entered tonight in 15th, Doucette entered tonight in 24th. Everybody in this bunch needs good finishes, and that's why they're all racing so hard already.
And we're essentially seeing what those drivers need to do start to come into play, because all the drivers that are underneath that top 20, as we get a look on board of Colin Keister in the battle for 5th with Jordy Lopez, the drivers who are underneath that cut line right now, 21st through 40th, they need good finishes starting tonight. They cannot wait for good finishes anymore. They can't hope that they get lucky and get a good finish. They need to start making it happen. So for the drivers that are underneath that top 20, they need good finishes tonight. We're starting to see a handful of them start to work their way up through the field, or already are up at the front of the field and currently holding on. But right now, at the front, as we go on board with Brian LaPrade, a lot of the drivers who are currently up here, except for Jordy Lopez Jr., who came in 29th in the point standings, are having good seasons already. So I believe it's a huge stack up off of turn number 4 around the 18 of Femi Olot.
A lot there, nearly getting sideways just a little bit. And he checked up a few drivers and lost a ton of track position as he's now stuck on the outside, trying to work his way back alongside Brandon McKissick. Alan Bowes to his inside. Dylan Alt trying to make moves, but a lot there with trouble. And the closest thing we've had to an incident yet this evening nearly ended up sideways. Looks like Ashton Crowder was the one who just about wrecked in front of them, so we nearly had our first yellow, but Crowder is very, very loose, and he's not the only one in this field that is. For more information from pit road, let's go to Justin Prince. Justin.
Yes, indeed. No Major words from Ashton Crowder, staying mainly focused after what just happened a moment ago that lost him several positions. Crowder has resolved that towards the midst of the Hornets' nest to 31st position. But in regards to the drivers struggling with looseness right now, Colin Keister is amongst those in that battle you were watching for 5th position, where he feels he is wrecking loose currently and the worst car on the track off of turn 4. Colin Keister is trying different lines to see what will work in that fight.
I can also tell you that just off the way Ashton Crowder's been driving this racetrack, that the right rear tire on his machine, I won't necessarily say it's 100% gone, but it's pretty well worn out. And we're only 30 laps into this run. He's been sideways through the middle of the corner, 2-corner exit, every single corner the last 3 laps.
That car is looking demonic at this point. I mean, just look at, he's barely even turning, he's almost turning right more than he's turning left and nearly slams into the wall. Corner exit there out of turn number 4. But he's not the only guy who I've seen get loose. Now, he's the only guy, and there might have been some contact or something, because he, did a rallycross drift across an entire set of corners. But there has been a few different drivers really get loose in the center of the corner, and the track temperature is not helping. We just got the sunshine back on the track, and I feel like that is the only element of iRacing that you really cannot simulate 100%. The amount of hours that these guys spend in the sim on their setups is immaculate, but knowing where the track temperature is going to change when the weather comes over. The track temperature started at 99, raised to 101, and it's now back down to 99. So even though we had that cloud cover, it really didn't bring the temperature of the track back down any. So again, this is another element that if you did not anticipate this track being at 100 degrees almost the entire race, adjustments will need to be made on your first pit stop.
And that will also change over the course of this race. You imagine as we move into the high hours for the sun that this track will only gain track temperature, and it will only get warmer and warmer and warmer as you look on board Parker Retzlaff, or rather Donovan Strauss, and look back to Parker Retzlaff. The gap there is just under a full second of the racetrack, but those two pretty well clear of everybody else, as is Caden Honeycutt, as is Jake Nichols, and then the train that starts with Jordy Lopez Jr. having a really good run when he really, really needs one. But that's a group that runs all the way back from Jordy Lopez to, let's call it, Santiago Gutierrez in 13th. So 8 cars there in the mix, trying to figure out who wants to be in the top 10, who wants to be just outside it.
We go on board now with Santiago Gutierrez, who tries to work his way more up through the top 10 as he still sits P13, exact same spot last time we checked in with the 17, following the 04 Derek Bordeaux. Side-by-side moment with Taylor Hurst and Colin Keister up at the front of this line, with Blake Reynolds starting to get into the mix as well. And they'll dive back into one. There's that side-by-side battle. Hurst on the bottom. Keister's going to be on the outside, now getting up above Blake Reynolds. The fight off of turn number 2. Reynolds trying to challenge. And Keister getting a great run off of turn number 2. But they dive back into 3. A calm Blake Reynolds trying to work his way around Colin Keister. He will clear the very similar-looking red and white number 8 off of turn 4.
Man's out here having a conversation while he's just casually slinging this car around Nashville Superspeedway at in excess of 140, 50, 60 miles an hour at points down the end of the straightaways. Here's Chris Shearburn, and look at the contrast there. You see Reynolds much more easygoing, much less tension in his body. Shearburn here with the intense focus, not really many words being said, and maybe for a good reason, because Shearburn enters tonight 32nd in points, and he's a driver who too could use a good run.
I mean, that's actually a good point, because Blake Reynolds is a guy who's 4th in the points, 35 points above the cut line. He's just been a smooth operator throughout this entire series thus far. He just has to keep doing what he's doing until Shearburn got into the top 10. Reynolds was the only guy inside the top 10 who did not start there. So, I mean, I wish that I looked like Blake Reynolds when I was racing myself. I have like my mouth like halfway open. I'm probably doing the lean as well, and I look absolutely crazy. He's going, yeah, you know, guys, where are we going after this? Like, do you guys want to meet up anywhere? I'm going to go. Like, he's just hanging out right now, having himself a good race, and that's another piece of having a good setup under you as well. He just looks ridiculously comfortable. Right? So this is what you want to be looking like early in a run at Nashville. It can't get a heck of a lot worse than this when you're just kind of relaxing in that cockpit.
and save your energy for the later stages of this race when you need it. Meanwhile, we're starting to see grooves begin to develop. Everybody's trying to go to the bottom for the vast majority of the beginning of this race, but we're starting to see shuffles in the order. Here's a look at Santiago Gutierrez working his way to the inside of Derek Bordeaux. Also just ahead, I see Brian LaPrade working to the inside of Jordy Lopez Jr. Those two fighting for position to be the 6th spot that they're wrestling for and trying to chase down Jake Nichols and Kyle Peddle.
I mentioned earlier, top of the show, where when everybody was running single file, it was because pretty much everybody was on somewhat of even playing field. Now, we're starting to get to the point where a lot of these drivers are not on even playing field. We started this run, top drivers were running about 35s, 30.6s. Now they're all pretty consistently running 31.9s, maybe even into the 32s. Some drivers running 32.1s last time by. So we've lost a significant amount of time with these tires. So now it's not going to be a lot of setup disparity that is allowing these passes to happen. It is a lot of tire disparity where the drivers who saved their tires a little bit better are going to start to have rocket ships compared to the drivers who burned up those right rear or right front tires, and they're going to be losing a ton of time on the racetrack.
Liam Brotherton working his way up to potentially the top 25 if he can make things happen here with Blade Witt. But I think we're starting to see more battles develop here in the back, too. I wasn't necessarily certain if that was just a trend we'd see towards the front, but it looks like to me, Devin Henry, we're starting to see this track take rubber. And as this track rubbers up, we're starting to see drivers move up to that middle groove, move maybe into a higher groove, maybe a third groove if you want to stretch it, and see if there's more speed up there, especially as these tires wear out.
Well, honestly, it looked like to me that was a Cam Newton jersey, but my Carolina Panther history doesn't go far enough back to really know if that was or not. But good to have faith in your team right there during a difficult time. Oh, yeah, NASCAR racing. No, I completely agree, because eventually you're going to need to move off the bottom. I think that you're going to eventually start scrubbing off that speed. And again, if you want to pass someone, like, right here, you got to use a lane different than them, right? So having the ability to move somewhere else on the track is going to be pivotal to your success. In this battle just outside the top 10, it kind of figures out where do you need to be right now.
Let's see if we can find out a little bit more information on the tire wear as we watch this battle for P5. Down to pit road we go with Justin Prince.
And it's a case of two different stories when it comes to clean air versus dirty air right now, because when it comes to Donovan Strauss, he's pulled away by nearly 2 seconds. The comfortability in that car has been to the point where he said he is flying like a butterfly in the wind and feels like the car's getting even better as the run goes on. Compare that to the drivers behind him. Parker Retzlaff and Caden Honeycutt, it's the opposite story. Parker Retzlaff has been struggling with turn in the center. They look to try and potentially make adjustments coming up, while Caden Honeycutt has been struggling with trying to get rotation as well consistently and constantly in turns 1 and 3, to the point where every time he gets closer to the car in front, it's getting even tighter with the dirty air. A lot of struggles for some of the drivers in traffic.
The dirty air playing a much, much greater role in this race than I think we've seen in maybe any of the races so far in this 2021 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series. Meanwhile, Donovan Strauss, I think the operative term is float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Josh Lee, something to that effect. And in fairness, the Space Station gaming car is black and yellow colored, so if he wanted to sting like a bee, he certainly has the car for it in that sense.
Definitely looking quite bee-like. Reminds me of the old B Pittsburgh Steelers throwback uniforms. Give me a little bit of those vibes. More black than yellow, but that is one sharp-looking Space Station gaming paint scheme. And JP mentioned top of the show over Donovan Strauss having a pretty big fever coming into tonight, being up all night with being sick and not getting a ton of sleep or any sleep at all. Looking great down there in that car right now. It could have had me fooled if he would have slept 12 hours last night, leading the race by 2 seconds. A great car under him. He doesn't need to work too hard. He's just out there on a lovely Tuesday evening drive.
You know it's got to be a struggle, though, for anybody with a fever. You know how tough it is. And I know in cases like this, I would not even want to be touching my sim trying to race if I were him. So I think it's a great testament to the strength of Donovan Strauss that he's not only racing under the weather, but leading under the weather, and by a significant margin as well. Here's Derek Bordeaux, currently in the 12th spot, looking at the battle between Santiago Tires and Jake Nichols just ahead of him. Nichols, of course, driver in the Coke Series last year. Santiago Tires was in the series 2 years ago, was booted and lost out on a spot last year, didn't finish high enough in the Contender Series in 2020, and now is trying to race his way back into the Coke Series for 2022 here.
And Nichols attempting to use that outer lane to gain a little bit of a run. And honestly, he could pinch Tiers if you wanted to, and that would really unsettle the 17, but there's no need to get a little bit crafty. Only 47 laps into this race, so for now he'll forfeit that position and slide back a spot to P11. And Bordeaux, though, is going to be right up on that rear bumper. And again, are you going to be able to use multiple lanes? You even see here trying to make that pass. Bordeaux kind of slides up in the center of the corner, but just that outside lane does not have the momentum for Nichols to really blast off the corner and really be safe from another attack. But Bordeaux will decide to holster it back up, set fire again eventually. So you can kind of see them moving off that innermost part of the inside lane. I'm curious if they continue to float up as these tires continue to wear off.
Be curious to see whether or not Bordeaux can make this pass from the bottom, or whether or not Nichols has the ability to pinch him down from up top. That's something I think we'll want to watch over the course of the next 20 laps or so. We're not terribly far away from our first window of pit stops, but that information could be crucial if we get towards the end of the race, because I would imagine somebody would just slide up high and hold that top lane and keep people from being able to completely wind up the car on corner exit. As we get a good look at Parker Retzlaff's machine here, just riding in P3, but look at that, a little bit of damage to the right front of his Toyota Supra.
Wondering how that damage got there for Parker Retzlaff, but Pedal able to get up there, and he hit the wall. JP, what do you got from down on pit road?
If we can get a little word from JP later, but just going back and looking at it, from what I can tell, looks like he clipped it on corner entry to turn 3, just tried to arc the car a little bit too much and got the fence, so we'll see how that affects his machine. Meanwhile, here's Taylor Hurst, who's done a nice job of just sort of biding his time, waiting patiently, picking up positions, now working to the inside, trying to get a spot from Jordy Lopez Jr. and make his way into the top 5 for the first time tonight.
Hey, and I don't like joking about the lean, because even you see him there on the 4-degree bankings on the back straightaway. He's still leaning as he goes to the inside here to make the move. You know, this is something where I feel like I myself sometimes do this, even just when I don't even know it, just kind of holding that kind of lane to make yourself feel like you're in a good position. Hurst makes the move. That puts him inside the top 5 now. He started this race in the 8th position. Haven't been a lot of big movers, but one guy that is a big mover was just in his rearview mirror. Blake Reynolds up 7 spots from the start of this race. I think that if you are someone like Taylor Hurst, you want to leave that red number 66 behind you. Maybe a car or two in between as well, as now Reynolds makes the moves from P6.
We'll come back to Reynolds in just a moment, but let's go to Justin Prince, who's got more on that starter with Parker Retzlaff.
Yes, indeed, and the reason for the damage was a graze to the wall, is what I'm understanding, down the back straightaway, and it is not good. He is really upset when it comes to that car right now as a result of the damage. The speed has dropped off 0.3 of a second per lap as a result of that contact. It was right about where they are now, down the back straightaway a few laps ago. Right now, his team is trying to come up with a plan to try and fix this and deal with the damage. It's similar to what he had to deal with the last race, remember.
And you can see it already is affecting him just a bit. He's lost positions to Honeycutt, to Hurst. Blake Reynolds now to his inside. Jordy Lopez looking there. If he gets freight trained and stuck up top, he can slide all the way back to about Chris Schuburn and Santiago Tires. That's what the first gap in this field is. So Retzlaff may go all the way from 2nd back to 10th by the time this all settles out.
And one driver pitting from the back, Ashton Crowder, is in. He's hit the wall again, it looks like, out of turn number 4, and he is now out of the car. So that's unfortunately going to be night done for the 98 of Ashton Crowder. But talking about pit stops, fuel window 66 to 67 laps. We're going to be expecting some drivers into the pit lane here in about 10 laps, James. And I think we're going to see a couple of drivers from the mid-pack maybe try and run a different strategy. Hearing some calls of pitting from a couple of drivers now through the middle portion of the field. Who's going to go for that wild strategy, and will it work? Shearburn's going to be the first one to hit pit road, as I believe Garrett Lowe trying to get in, spinning on the entry. He will make it into pit lane.
He was so sideways and just about out of it, and it was very close there. But pit stops beginning here on lap 55 of 167. So differences in strategies beginning to line up. Justin Prince, what do you have for pit road?
Well, when it comes to that entry, you just seen a glimpse of with Garrett Lowe. They say they are very lucky when it comes to how close they got when it came to that commitment cone. Kyle Petty is now also coming on, and this time by, their camp is very happy with the speed. They feel like they're one of the quickest, in fact, the quickest car on the racetrack outside of Donovan Strauss currently. Blake Reynolds has also been very happy with his 66 machine. He peels on in, as well as Caden Honeycutt and a whole host of cars. Several competitors have been talking about trying to balance the right rear tires a bit better with this respective run. Here in lap 57, majority of these drivers. Donovan Strauss, meanwhile, who, mind you, is confident this long run and pace continues on, all while Jordy Lopez and Taylor O'Hurst also duck in. Derek Justice is also coming on in this time by. In regards to Justice, he felt at one point he may have picked up some damage from the contact with Ashton Crowder. His crew checked that, no damage came on through. He's been trying to get himself back into a rhythm. All while the rest of the drivers continue to pit, here comes Donovan Strauss to peel on in. Right now, that camp is very confident. Boyd Hogan has been cheering him on this entire night so far. He has been happy from the drop of the green flag and feels he's got the speed to win this race and then some tonight to become the first multi-item winner of the season. He'll come on in this time.
And everybody in save for Blake McCandless, the one driver who's going to hang out on the racetrack, and I suspect Blake is going to be the one who's going to try and stretch it the length of the fuel window and go all the way to lap 67 and try and make this a two-stop race. So now all eyes on the fast Chevrolet Camaro for Kligerman Sport of Blake McCandless to try and see if he can stretch this out for another 7 laps or so.
Yeah, and you know, we saw this last week as well with a couple of drivers, but Justin, what are you seeing the strategy being here for McCandless and Kligerman Sport?
Well, keep in mind, he entered tonight with, is there less than 0% confidence? Because he did not feel confident about this car. Let's put it that way when it comes to the pace. His thought right before the pit window opened up was essentially, let's try something different. May as well try something with strategy. He phrased it like that. He is also pumped up. He's just led a lap. He feels his life is accomplished. He feels like he is happy because he's led a race as a black stripe. Now it's the matter of, will he get the luck he's looking for?
I love it.
Accomplishment of dreams achieved and all that sort of stuff, racing the eNASCAR Contender Series. We're, I suppose, dream makers here at iRacing. We'll keep our eyes here on McCandless. At this stage, he's about 20 seconds ahead of Kyle Petty, who currently is scored as your second place driver. But as it stands, McCandless still in control of this, and maybe, just maybe, gonna make it. Also a note there, Josh Lee, we've seen that wheel a time or two before, but that's a pretty special wheel that he's got underneath him.
As long as it works, it can be used. I mean, we talk about Timmy Hill, NASCAR Cup Series competitor, former eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series competitor. Up until this year, I don't believe he's even upgraded it yet, using a Logitech G27. So as long as it works, in that case, the Driving Force GT, it can be used, and Blake McCandless trying to get to the top step of eNASCAR with that wheel. As you can see, the worn tires are starting to show for the 15, as there goes everybody right on by, trying to get all of their laps back. The last one there was Mercurio. He'll have Bowden, Burrows, Nichols, Tucker, and Pedersen still to come, as he's going to try and stretch this as far as he possibly can. Donovan Strauss with a 31 flat last time by. Blake McCandless last time by a 32.3.
Donovan Strauss, meanwhile, has gotten around Kyle Petty, so that's second. And when McCandless comes in, that will be the difference in the race lead. As it stands, though, we are still waiting for McCandless to make his move. And this could get interesting here because he's still got a pretty sizable gap. So this could play out very much in his favor if he can make it 2 stops instead of 3 like everybody else. He'll sacrifice the track speed, but this is a play where if it goes green flag and you plan for it from the beginning, it can work. It can pay dividends, and given that he was dead last at Auto Club 2 weeks ago, to some degree, I think you sort of have to throw caution to the wind here and go for it, because you're going to have a good finish in order to give yourself any sort of fighting chance at making the Coke Series next year if you're Blake McCandless.
And you saw last week at Auto Club where Ashton Crowder had an issue, and so he attempted the strategy, didn't work out for him. Here, I mean, it's all or nothing, because why not if you're Blake McCandless and company? You know that you need to make up points to the point where you're 18 points below the cut line, right? So I'm going to come out here, and I know that I need to have a good finish. What is he losing right now, though? Obviously, having those older tires, he is losing monumentally a ton of time to everyone else in the field. And while, yeah, on one hand, he's going to get that back once he goes back and pits, but some of the time that you lose right now, and then once you're into the pack with fresh tires, you're never going to get that time back like these guys are running right now. So for McCandless, it's an all-or-nothing strategy, but if you do get that caution late enough in this run, and everybody comes back down to get fresh tires and a full tank of fuel, it puts McCandless in a situation where he could go from almost too far below the cut line to right there fighting halfway through the season.
Here we are on lap 67, so in theory, if McCandless is making this a 2-stop race, the window is now open for him to come down pit road. The question is whether or not he decides to do just that. Survey says no. He's going to stay out and try and stretch this even further. So this is now more about the caution game that Devin just referenced, Josh. It's that more so than it is trying to hit the gaps and hit the marks.
And he was just saying, anyone want to do the caution dance right now? So McCandless looking for a yellow flag at this stage, but this is going to be a risky strategy. Of course, James, we talk about that 1 or 2 drivers who go for the risky strategy, and it didn't work at Phoenix, didn't work at Olmsted, didn't work at Auto Club. Maybe Blake McCandless has figured out something that we haven't, and the risky strategy might actually end up working out, because Donovan Strauss, even after about 9 laps since he came into his pit stall, is still only about 15 seconds back from McCandless. That is still a pretty substantial gap even after green flag pit stops are over.
Not bad. It's not bad at all. Something that definitely could last. It's going to fade, of course, as this race goes on. They're going to make up the gap in the distance between pit stops. Meanwhile, here's a good look at Garrett Lowe, who currently rides in the 13th spot. He's just behind Brian LaPrade, Chris Schubert, and Derek Bordeaux. Cody Bias just ahead of this group, so this is his 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th we're watching.
Garrett Lowe up 9 spots in the beginning of this race, so a good run so far for Lowe to get himself in a decent position out of North Carolina. So if he's able to continue moving his way through the field, a caution would definitely kind of mix things up, because you see a couple of guys who've been running through the field. First of all is Lowe, one of the guys who actually utilized the outside lane a little bit earlier on in this race. But then you look ahead towards Cody Bias. We haven't really mentioned the 27 car all tonight. He's up 10 spots. He's put himself into the top 10 based off of a quiet yet consistent run to open up this first stretch. You go down pit road at the right time, and now the 27 has his team inside that top 10. Besides that, in the top 10, besides obviously Blake McCandless, you also have, looks like McCandless down pit road as well. So there goes McCandless' strategy. But if we continue to stay green like we did at Auto Club, he could do this again. Not a problem at all, so long as he stays on that lead lap once everyone comes down onto pit road. Again, he is waiting for that perfectly timed caution. He doesn't really have anything else to lose.
Justin Prince, we just saw it. Here's Blake McCandless coming out of pit road, the only driver who's going to try and make this a 2-stop race.
And as you guys discussed, it was essentially the thought process from McCandless as he came into the box. What do we have to lose? He ended up nearly running out of gas, keep in mind, though. He felt nervous about making it the distance to his pit stall, but he kind of made the half-joking quip. We qualified towards the back to make sure I didn't run out of fuel down the pit lane. So Blake McCandless trying something different. The downside is he is now last on the track. The next car is 16 seconds up the road.
And maybe of note, maybe the more important thing here, and it'll help that the 15-lap difference in tires plays in his favor, but Donovan Strauss is right there. He's only maybe, call it 4 or 5 seconds ahead of your race leader. So McCandless may have to worry a little bit about making sure that he stays on the lead lap over the course of this stint, unless the difference in speed is great enough to keep him ahead of Donovan Strauss and just out of his reach. We'll take a look at lap times as they come across the stripe. McCandless is first fast lap after pitting at 30.5 and Strauss at 31.2. So that suggests to me that McCandless will at least stay on the lead lap, but so many of his eggs, not just for this race, but arguably his entire Contender Series campaign, now rests on this strategy and whether or not we either go green the rest of the way or we get a caution at the right time.
And running up front now, Donovan Strauss. A great run that is shaping up for that number 51. How about Femi Olot back here in the pack now? He was running about mid-pack and is now a little bit further back, P19. A good run from Femi Olot that is shaping up for him so far in the point standings here in the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series. And you look back behind him at the number 24, Jake Nichols. He needs some good runs as he sits P15 in the points right now in that Mode Motorsports number 24. For a lot of the drivers who sit 11th through 20th, Bose, LaPrade, Shelton, Bordeaux, Nichols, Altz, Petal, Bowden, the other Nichols, Zach Nichols, and Brandon McKissick, they all need some consistent runs as they all sit close to that cut line as we go on board with Ryan Doucette. Personal favorite shirt of mine he's wearing. He's got the Gravedigger shirt on.
I was about to say, how many world championships are we up to now?
I believe we are at a grand total of 6 in total for that team, maybe 5. I believe it's 5.
Something, but long story short, there are a lot of world championships for Gravedigger. We'll see whether or not Doucette can dig his way back to the front. Good battle here that we are watching. Really tough fight with Brian Mercurio, who's trying to use some of the Jersey power to get clear. Ryan Doucette go after Greer, South Carolina's Malik Ray, who's next up on the track for him. So this is 26th, 27th, and 28th that we're watching. And then you've got Ryan Doucette, Colin Bowden, Brandon McKissick, Zach Nichols, all right around 30th, just behind this group.
90 laps to go, guys, and if I'm Cruz, I'm thinking, okay, when's this next stop going to happen? Because I think what's going to ultimately be important, of course, it's hitting your marks if you come down pit road and we remain cautionless in this race, but this line continues. I mean, we're all just running on the inside right now, right? You got to have a run on someone to make a pass. What better way to get a run than, let's add some tape to the front of it. Granted, everyone's already almost been overheating in this race. What do you do with air pressures? What do you do with some right rear wedge on this next stop to adjust and make this car faster depending on when that next pit stop is going to fall? And for some of these guys who are below the cut line, I might also start considering what risk can I take when we come down pit road next. Whether we lose spots or we gain spots, all I know is that we need to gain spots. One thing that I'm glad that we've not talked about on the broadcast so far tonight is drop weeks. Because after tonight, we only have 3 more races to go. But the majority of these drivers are not concerned with that drop week yet. They just want to go and get themselves good finishes. Right now, Colin Keister is one of those guys who doesn't even need to fathom what's going on with drop weeks. Phenomenal finishes to open up this series, and right now sits 53 points above the cut line. And again, even though he started a little bit further up in this race, in the 5th position, he's fallen back to 14th. This is where having a great, consistent beginning to the season allows you to have a quote-unquote off race, if you want to call it that, like this, where he can be in 14th and he doesn't need to stress about it. Yeah, you want to be in the top 10, but you don't need to stress about this finish right now for these guys up front.
It's so wild to think that this would be Keister's drop right now. He's currently in 14th. His worst finish of the season so far, 7th, Josh Lee. 7th.
crazy, the season that is ramping up for a lot of these drivers in this field as well. You talk about Colin Keister, who currently leads the points. You talk about Caden Honeycutt. He's having an amazing season so far. Cody Bias, another one of those drivers who just can't seem to do any wrong. Blake Reynolds, Femi Olot is up there. Garrett Lowe. Parker Retzlaff with domination towards the end of the race in Phoenix. He was able to grab that win away from Nicholas Shelton. And then Keister and Strauss, the last winners of the Homestead and Auto Club races. So if Strauss does win, it was mentioned earlier, it would be the second straight win for him and the first driver this season to have multiple wins on his stat book. So that's going to be huge for Donovan Strauss if he is able to do that. But we talk about race points leader Colin Keister. He has not really had any bad finishes yet this season. His drop is more like a good finish, a top 10 for everybody else.
Another look at Briar LaPrade, currently running in 7th. Another driver that I think we'll need to touch base on, and one who's sort of quietly been really strong, Kyle Peddle. But we'll worry about Kyle Peddle here in a moment because we've hit cross flags. So this is the halfway point in the 2021 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series season. This is also time for our iRacing Midway Race Break, which as always is brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in Australian supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the world of outlaws, and more. And don't forget, if you visit iRacing.com/Black Friday, you get 50% off of a new account sign up and 25% off of renewals. This is the time to renew your account if you have not done so already, and this offer ends very soon. So get to iRacing.com/Black Friday now and save money on renewals so you can race for less later. Donovan Strauss, our leader by 1.6 seconds over Kyle Peddle. Caden Honeycutt, Taylor Hurst, and Blake Reynolds occupy the top 5 at this stage. 6 belongs to Jordy Lopez Jr. 7 is where you'll find Briar LaPrade, just where he started. Cody Bias up from 19th on the grid to 8th. Parker Retzlaff currently in 9th, even with that damage. And Derek Bordeaux also right where he started, currently running in 10th, Josh Lee.
P11 going to go to Chris Shearburn at the moment. Garrett Lowe will sit P12. Santiago Tierez and Colin Keister in a battle for that 13th spot. With Derek Justice rounding out the top 15. He's going to get into the mix in that battle as well. Alan Bowes, Michael Cozy Jr., 16th, 17th. 18th goes to Seth DeMerchant. Femi Olot's 19th with Dylan Alt rounding out the top 20.
Daniel Eberhard is your Podium Esports hard charger at the moment from 37th to now 21st in the field. Jake Nichols stuck in 22nd. Blade Whitten 23rd, Liam Brotherton 24th, Nicholas Shelton in P25, and behind him is Malik Gray, Brian Mercutio, Colin Bowden in P28, Zach Nichols and Brandon McKissick round out the top 30.
Ryan Doucette riding in the 31st position. 32nd is Casey Tucker. Anthony Burrows currently holds the 33rd spot. At 34th is Jake Matheson. Christian Peterson currently sitting in the 35th spot. 36 belongs to Blake McCandless and Ashton Crowder, the 37th and final car that took the green flag this evening. That concludes tonight's iRacing Midway Race Break. With over 170,000 drivers on the service and over 90 laser scan tracks and cars to choose from, iRacing is your portal to the racing world. Get on track today at iRacing.com. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but we'll be back with more coverage of the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series from the virtual Nashville Superspeedway in just a moment. Welcome back to Podium Esports coverage of the 2021 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series, the virtual Nashville Superspeedway. Race number 4 of 7 in the campaign. James Pike with Josh Leeds, Evan Henry, and Justin Prince down on pit road. Good battles all over the racetrack as Donovan Strauss continues to lead this race, but we're starting to see it pick up right here with Taylor Hurst, but even more so further back with Colin Keister, Garrett Lowe, and Alan Bowes racing for 12th, 13th, and 14th.
And they're going to continue this fight here. As you can see now, everybody getting into the middle portion of this stint. Everybody's starting to feel the effects of tire wear. They're up in the 31.8s, 31.9s, and this is really where those lap times are going to start to plateau. They're not really going to get any slower, but they're also not going to get any faster either. So they're going to stay just about right here as those tires continue to wear. Great onboard there with Garrett Lowe. You can see him getting a little bit loose off the exit of turn 2, having to correct it over to the right. And now Alan Bowes is going to try and go for that spot on Garrett Lowe. Look at Michael Cozy Jr. in that Logitech G Alta C Sports number 99. Front row seat for the battle for 13th and 15th with Lowe, Bowes, Justice, and Tires ahead of him.
Starting to see this track really jumping. But again, this is also about the same point in the first run, Devin, where we saw drivers start to move to that top curve. Everybody wanted to stay on the bottom with the fresh rubber, but as everything began to wear out on these tires, everybody started to shuffle to the middle groove, the high groove, and now all of a sudden we're starting to see drivers really use all of this racetrack.
Boy, we were just looking at that battle with Bowes, Lowe, Justice, and Tires, and Lowe gave Bowes a good little stop right there. Otherwise, he would have bumped him and maybe turned him. But hey, have we talked about Caden Honeycutt tonight at all? He's been in the top 5 like this entire race. He's second in the points right now, and Honeycutt is another guy like Keister where you look out, if this is his drop, which, I mean, he's still in 4th. I'm not trying to say anything here, but he's had a phenomenal run this season. He's looking great so far tonight, and I have to argue sometimes that it's races like this for Caden Honeycutt where very quiet yet very successful, where these are the ones that you look back on and go, yes, that was exactly what I needed to have a great run. He started this race in P4. He's still sitting in P4. And he's just been there. He's been there the entire time. But right behind him, Blake Reynolds, this is the guy who's probably impressed me the most thus far. Started in 14th, now looking to take away that 4th position from Honeycutt. He's really been the only guy to make a plentiful amount of moves through a lot of really fast cars in difficult situations towards the front, and also run guys down. The front is the furthest gap between one another, and Reynolds has somehow made up those gaps, made the passes. That 66 has impressed me tonight so far.
Well, let's go ahead and let's talk about the drivers we've not had the chance to talk about. So we'll go to your point first, Devin, and talk a little bit about Caden Honeycutt, because you're right. We haven't said his name a lot tonight, but he's also just been hanging out in the top 5 pretty much the whole race. Nothing crazy to this race, but it's been another consistent top 5 run, which is pretty much exactly what Honeycutt has been able to do. It's been top 5 or top 10 every single race in this campaign, just about. Worst finish, I believe, 11th, if my math is right.
Well, consistency is exactly what all these drivers need, James. I mean, we've mentioned it many times before, where if you finish top 20 in every race, you have nothing to worry about with the points. You're pretty much guaranteed a spot in the Coca-Cola iRacing Series at that point. So if you're consistent, finishing top 10 every race, top 15 every race, if you can finish top 5 every race, you're going to be running for a Coke Series championship in the year that you enter. But if you can just finish consistently top 10, top 15, pretty much guaranteed a spot at the top level of eNASCAR in 2022. So Caden Honeycutt is looking like he is in a prime spot to where even with that drop, he might not even need to rely on the drop first of all, but even with that drop, he is going to sit as one of the drivers who gets locked in before we even go to the final round of the season.
The other driver that we haven't had the chance to chat about as we look at Blake, what you just saw him on the screen a few moments ago, Kyle Peddle, who very quiet. Truth be told, I'm not sure if too many people on our team knew what he was capable of, and he did not have a good finish at Phoenix Raceway. But since then, 7th at Homestead and an 8th at Auto Club, and now racing in P2, a big step towards the Coke Series if he can maintain this track position and get it done for Dead Zone Racing tonight in his Toyota Supra. Maybe one of the larger X factors, I think, coming into this series. One of the lesser known names, but he is beginning to prove that he does have the speed to compete with the best of the best.
And you mentioned how at Phoenix it wasn't a great night for him, and ever since, though, having that consistency has allowed him to be 17th in the points. And this is the guy who at first was looking like could have gave Donovan Strauss a little bit of a run for his money at the very least. And Justin Prince, you're hearing that pedal right now is just loving life.
Yep, that's exactly what Michael Garoglia mentioned when I asked him how he was feeling in the car just moments ago. They're happy in that camp because the car has been touched all race. It's more so for them managing the gap from behind. They're happy they gained on Donovan Strauss interval-wise, but their focus at the start of the run after the pit stops was more so on Caden Honeycutt. Speaking of Caden Honeycutt, it's kind of the opposite situation currently, where he is currently dealing with losing grip in that fourth position, struggles for Caden Honeycutt in his car. Compare that to Parker Retzlaff, who's continuing to fight his machine. He is very much so not loving life right now, where he is hoping for a caution to get the damage fixed. He's just hoping to keep on fighting at this point. A lot of discussions to try and figure out what they will do there as he looks to the back end of that scary 27 or 21.
Yeah, and it's not even spooky season now, and we're still just trying to hang on there, right, Devin?
Yeah, I would say what's almost scarier than the back of that 21 car is that damage on the right front. I'm almost surprised that obviously it was a green flag stop, so you didn't spend too much time doing manual damage repair, but the fact that that's still causing so much aero holdup, that's just, man, I mean, I would be throwing my steering wheel at this point with how fast he was, the frustration. I mean, I can't imagine right now being in that cockpit, and sometimes you might have the gauges blinking at you, but it's been a phenomenal recovery in the sense that it is so easy to let something like that get to you. He was running well inside the top 5 guys when that damage happened from what looked like might have been some sort of just little brief hit, and he's not that far off his speed, but it's not, look at, I mean, that's like 4/10. That's so frustrating, but the fact that he has the mindset to keep himself in the top 15 right now, boy, is that impressive.
Yeah, it's a very weird thing to think about somebody like Parker Retzlaff running in 12 and having a really, really bad day. At least by his standards, bad day. But then again, this is Parker Retzlaff we're talking about, who came into tonight 3rd in points. So your frame of reference shifts a little bit, because let's be honest, Josh, there are a lot of people, including Chris Sherbert, who we just rode with, the Beviolat right here, who would love to take a P12 out of Nashville and go with it. It'd be a great finish for them, but not so much for Parker Retzlaff.
Yeah, for Retzlaff, it's going to be a bit of a setback for that 42, but you mentioned Derek Justice. He walks away with a 12th place finish. I think he's even finishing 13th where he's currently running right now. He is going to be ecstatic about it because he comes into this race 24th in the point standings, on board with Blake Reynolds, another one of those drivers who, if he can get out with a good finish here, that's going to propel him for the rest of the series. 4th place currently in points, but he is not clear of that cut line yet. Once he exits here in Nashville with 3 races to go at Dover, Darlington, and Texas before the end of the Contender Series campaign, he's going to be looking like a lot better scenario for that number 66, and he can start to focus a little bit on 2022 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series versus the Contender Series.
The lean is still alive for Winston-Salem, North Carolina's Taylor Hurst, to I guess maybe taking some cues from Garrett Smithley in the lead stream. Excuse me, our camera is taking cues from the lead stream. So I guess, I don't know, maybe we're going to get a lap with a gyro cam here for Taylor Hurst, and maybe that'll get a little bit bigger as we go into the turns, and then maybe go back down as you go down the back straightaway. Let's see, does camera turn? There we go. So now we'll just have to wait and see how it goes for the rest of the lap, right, Josh?
I guess we're going to find out. There it goes, right back in turn number 3 as Hurst tries to fight from 3rd. Ooh, look at Kyle Petto up in front, getting a little bit loose through the middle portion of the racetrack. But there goes the camera lean as well. Wondering if Hurst had a bit of a say when he put that onboard camera on his virtual race car. There goes the lean again. He's catching up to Kyle Petto as well.
All right, I guess maybe we should stop rocking the forest here, and we'll let Taylor Hurst get on with this race. But again, a really strong run for him. And just looking through the running order, somebody who I think we need to go focus on a little bit further back, because right now I think he represents hardest charger. How about Alan Bowes from 26 on the grid all the way up to P10? Big run for Alan Bowes, who certainly is not going to complain about this after coming into tonight just sort of hanging around in the point standings in 7th, but this is one that he really is going to enjoy, and a finish I think he'll appreciate if he can maintain his track position here for the final 50 laps or so.
And you can see him gapping Colin Keister right now, which is a mighty accomplishment so far in this Contender Series. But the last time we checked in on Bowes, we saw a scary rear bumper as he was going around Parker Renslap. That was for the 13th, 12th position, so he's even picked off a few more drivers since then. But guys, I think it's time we start looking at pit stops. One car heads down onto pit road. We have just under 80 virtual miles remaining. Nichols is coming down pit road. Some of the guys more towards the back of the pack. Looks like that was the number 42 car, Renslap, as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if we have some swings and some misses here just because you want to throw something at this car to make a difference. I mentioned earlier, air pressures, tape. What do you do to make a small adjustment in this car to make it go faster? Might we see someone hit it out of the park on this and get themselves some extra positions and points?
If these cars are coming down pit road, it means that the second window of pit stops is open, and that means it's time to go back down to pit road and get all the information from Justin Prince.
A quick stop for Caden Honeycutt. He just backed out of the box, and he's elected to take the very short access road out to the box. Parker Renslap, he's been wanting major adjustments. It's been a struggle to figure out what they can do with that respective damage still hampering their machine. More drivers coming on in, this time by towards their boxes. Colin Keister very quiet throughout the race, as well as several of the other competitors, but many more rolling in. A lot of happy signs when it comes to the teams. Daniel Eberhardt, with how they've been handling drive off on corner exits so far in the 9E machine in that respective camp. Also peeling on in towards the lane, Blake Reynolds, he's been staying relaxed and calm throughout the night, while others like Chris Sherburne, they've described their night as very boring so far. No other words to put it. The rest of the competitors now rolling their way towards some of the boxes right now. A few more have continued to stay out for now, except for Jordy Lopez. Donovan Strauss continues to chug on around. Keep in mind, he actually just mentioned moments ago, he is the race car. He feels he's the water temp. The water temp is me. That's how confident Donovan Strauss is currently.
So he's gone from Rocky Balboa to Bruce Lee, and he's trying to be watered down. So I'm wondering at this stage, which fighter is Donovan Strauss going to pull out of his pocket and reference next?
Well, I mean, not to mention you also forgot the Michael Jordan reference that you threw out there earlier with the flu game, James.
True, yeah.
We got everyone. We got everyone in this for Donovan.
I guess it's been a tremendous performance for him as he comes back down pit road, as does Brian LaPratt, as does Alan Bowes. Leaves us with 3 drivers who are on this strategy to pit, and then Blake McCandless, who's on that 2-stop strategy.
And to cut in there, James, for a split second, some trouble for Taylor Hurstkamp. They ended up picking up a speeding penalty after a lot of encouragement from Robbie Fabril Jr. for how he had been performing the 74. He is now 1 lap down, and if anything, that may be trouble for how things could fare out for Blake McCandless, who will try and stretch things out for how the lucky dog could fare out. You see the frustration from Taylor Hurst. They were quietly amongst the drivers inside the top 3 before the pit window.
A big hit for Taylor Hurst, who came into the night 12th in points, and makes wonder this could end up being his job. As you get a good look at his machine now, here's Blake McCandless, currently scored in the 3rd position. Anthony Burrows yet to come down pit road. Ryan Doucette looking, not coming down this time though, but everybody waiting on those 2, Jake Matheson. That would complete this 3-stop group, and then McCandless, who will try and 2-stop this race and could, in theory, make it if he decided to come in with the next few laps. But remember, he stretched that first run a little bit longer than the 67 lap mark that we calculated he needed to hit in order to be able to make it on 2 stops. So I wonder whether or not this one's going to be shorter, or whether or not he's going to stretch this one longer as well.
And you can see the battle for the net race lead is starting to develop between Donovan Strauss and Blake Reynolds as they sit 7th and 8th. Anthony Burrows comes into the pit lane, wondering how long Blake McCandless is willing to stretch this. He's gonna have about 20 more laps from now that he can, in theory, stretch that fuel tank. Thing is, does he want to stretch the fuel tank that far? Caden Honeycutt currently holds the net race lead, still waiting on Matheson, McCandless, and Doucette to work his way into the pit lane. But once those three do, it will be Honeycutt back in the lead at the moment with pedal behind, and then Strauss and Reynolds starting to catch up.
Doucette would be the next one to come. Blake McCandless is actually not terribly far back of Ryan Doucette, who's making up ground on the race leader as it stands. So we'll see whether or not Doucette comes in from the race lead or second. But he's going to drive it off the corner and continue to work his way around. Looks like he's now trying to stretch this. He and Matheson might both be looking to hit that 67-lap mark. That would essentially cut out a pit stop from this race as Doucette nearly gets squirrely in the middle of 1 and 2. A bit of an evil handling car towards the end of the screen flag run for him.
And if that Nexus Esports number 77 on the right rear is kind of letting all the time go by on that and wearing out that right rear, that'd be trouble. Looks like an issue here for Daniel Eberhard in the number 90 machine. Looks like no gas in the number 90. Oh man, this is absolutely gut-wrenching. There's nothing else you can do but sit here and wait. The number 90, oh man, came into tonight 31st, and this is such a disappointing turnout here with 47 laps to go.
I won't say this is outright curtains on his chance to make the Coke Series, but it's going to take a turnaround the likes of which we might not have seen in times past. Justin Prince, you have more.
And it's a blown motor. It's a blown motor. No warning on the temperatures, they're saying, when it comes to the gauges. Tough break when it comes to Daniel Eberhard, especially since he was the biggest mover before the pit stop cycle. Oh, by the way, when the two drivers you see here were seeing that, Jake Matheson, or rather Ryan Deuce, yes, Jake Matheson, I should say, started over the in-game radio saying, please bring up the caution, pleading please several times.
Would have loved to have the track position as there goes Ryan Doucette down onto the apron and nearly sideways. I don't know if he actually made the entrance to pit road. Whether or not he'll get penalized for that, I'm not sure. But he is in the box. Here's a look at the way things were for Doucette coming down pit road. It means Blake McCandless will take over the race lead as Doucette comes in for service.
We had a little bit of cone destruction there close to that pit entry. Here's the onboard of Ryan Doucette. Tries to get onto the apron. There's the change and wasn't slowed down enough. Saves it almost. There's the cone and gets it straight on pit lane. Expecting him now to unfortunately have a little bit of a speeding penalty on the entry there, but he does make it into his pit stall and he is serving that penalty now.
Briar LaPrade now, the one we're watching. He's currently in 7th as we now keep all eyes on McCandless and company and whether or not this alternate strategy is going to pay dividends. The gap between McCandless and Honeycutt currently 6 seconds and closing as we start to see the difference in tires play out. There's McCandless, front of your screen, and Honeycutt just there. I can barely see traces of the red blur that represents Honeycutt Chevy Camaro just towards the very back of this. Here's a look off the deck lid of McCandless' machine. To the inside goes Christian Peterson, who will be getting his lap back with this pass. But Honeycutt's the next one in line just there at the beginning of the back straightaway. McCandless will cede a little bit more of his lead. The question is, how long is he going to try and stay out? And or do we get a yellow flag in the middle of this stretch of the race that would completely flip the strategy in his favor?
And let's get something straight here. This is not Blake Reynolds' strategy to have the lead. Not whatsoever. We saw this last week with Ashton Crowder. Yeah, McCandless, excuse me. This is not his strategy to go out here and start leading the race. He just wants a caution before he has to go on to pit road. As now you see the number 51 Donovan Strauss getting to the rear bumper of Kyle Peddle. He'll be able to move by. Strauss has 2 laps fresher tires than the 54, but for McCandless, he's just hoping for a caution before he has to pit. If he's in 8th place when that caution happens to come out, it still puts him in the top 10 if everyone else more than likely comes down and gets fresh tires. So don't think that McCandless is out here wanting to stay out in P1. I mean, that's best case scenario, but that's not the goal. The goal is for the caution to come out before he has to go down pit road, so then he at least has some sort of net massive gain position. Now, I'm curious about Donovan Strauss here because he has not been put in this position all night long. He is still a 1.5 seconds behind Caden Honeycutt, and Honeycutt does have 4-lap older tires, but unlike that first pit cycle, Strauss still has a massive gap to make up. As we look off the rear end here of Caden Honeycutt, Strauss has a lot of room to make up. Can he do this well enough to conserve that right front tire so once he does make the pass on Honeycutt, he can once again set sail into the ocean blue like he was earlier tonight?
It's a 4-lap difference on the tires between Honeycutt and Strauss. Honeycutt pulled the undercut and came down a little bit earlier than Strauss did, so that's where that call about 1.3 second gap between those two comes from. Here's a look at Colin Keister, who's a little bit further down the running order in 11th and trying to run down Chris Shearburn for a spot in the top 10. Looks like, though, he's enjoying his time. There's a decent smile on his face, and for someone who's not necessarily particularly expressive, Josh Lee, to me, if Colin Keister's smiling, that says something about how he's liking his car and his race.
In P11 currently on the racetrack, about net P10 once Blake McCandless comes in. Nothing to slouch at there at all, especially with him being the points leader. Derek Justice looking for a good finish as he sits outside looking in from the cut line. So another good night for the 31 of Derek Justice. Hopefully this will push him above that cut line without the drop weeks being counted as we see more drivers fighting up towards the front. 2.5 seconds now separating Honeycutt and McCandless at the front.
Meanwhile, Justin Prince, a little bit of information coming our way here about Jake Matheson's last pit stop.
Well, when you're down in the points, it usually means you try something different, right? Apparently their strategy was, on top of going long, why not take 2 tires? Yes, you heard right, they took 2 tires on that stop. They are currently struggling middle and off in the corners, got quarter panel damage, and now nearly are spinning out. Matheson's having a ball amongst this, by the way. They have been laughing as this has been going on. They actually gained a spot too from that call over Matheson, or rather Doucette, as a result of what happened to the 77 on his stop. So in our words, Matheson hoping for a lot to happen right now.
Maybe I'm nuts, Josh Lee, but that also seems like a case where maybe you get so beaten up and you're struggling for pace and you think yourself outside and inside and upside down and over and every which way possible, just trying to find speed. And eventually you just hit a point where you become a little bit delirious and you try anything and you can just laugh at it, even though long term, I can't imagine the prospects for Matheson's final green flag run, if we go green the rest of the way, shouldn't be that great.
Seems like Matheson's team just trying to throw the entire kitchen sink at the wall and hoping it sticks, and it doesn't look like it's stuck there at all. He's 1 lap down, 34th there, and Parker Retzlaff, you can see him right in front of the 18th place driver of Dylan Alt right now, dropping down the order right now. He started P2, down 15 spots to P16, about to be in P17 if Alt can make this pass happen. Wondering what happened for the driver who came in 7th in the point standings and Phoenix winner from round number 1, Parker Retzlaff in the 42. Here comes the move to the inside for Dylan Alt.
Alt looking to the inside of Parker Retzlaff, who's now back to 17th, and this maybe becomes a run in which you can understand the frustration a little bit more, because this is going to be a middling finish for Parker Retzlaff, and he will have one in better from tonight, but just not coming. That car has gotten tight ever since he clipped the wall in turn 3 and picked up the damage, and it just has not been the same for him on a track that is more aero-sensitive than you would think. Meanwhile, Donovan Strauss has been able to get around Caden Honeycutt and is now beginning to chase down Blake McCandless, and I guess the question is whether or not McCandless is going to put up a fight or let the leaders go. As it stands, he is the race leader for the moment. Here comes Donovan Strauss to the outside to take over the race lead.
Again, no concern, I think, in that company for McCandless to hold the lead here. They just want that caution to come out before he runs out of fuel. I feel like last time he was concerned about running it dry. I think McCandless this time will run it dry if he has to. He needs that caution for the strategy to play out.
At least that's the best case scenario for him. Now, he will be able to start running these drivers down once he does come down pit road. But there's the yellow flag right on cue. Somebody tell me, I wonder if we get an onboard of Blake McCandless and see what his reaction was to that, because that is exactly the break. Yep, there it is. Fist pump. Yep, you can see it right there. That tells you the story. Everything you needed to know about how he feels about this, you just saw right there. Blake McCandless gets the caution he needed in the worst way, and all of a sudden strategy changes entirely.
The incident was going through turns 1 and 2. Femi Olot gets into Derek Justice, and not a ton of damage to either car, but it was enough to bring out the yellow flag as Derek Justice went about 45 degrees over in the wrong direction. Here is that replay. Down into 1. Olot goes for the move. Justice tries to cover it off. There's the contact. There's Justice saving it, but getting a little bit too sideways, and iRacing pulls the yellow flag. Exactly what Blake McCandless needed and wanted. Everybody's in the pit lane.
Everybody's in the pit lane. Justin Prince, what can you tell us?
Well, Blake McCandless is celebrating like he just won several thousand championships at the same time. He said, "I love you, brother." He is pumped up because that strategy may have just saved his Contender Series points. He's off and away after the pit stop. Minimal adjustments for the rest of the drivers for this shorter run with under 30 laps to go. Off and away goes Cody Bias on his end of the pit lane, as well as Blake Reynolds. Keeping on the race off the lane. Caden Honeycutt with a good launch. Donovan Strauss spins the tires. Caden Honeycutt lifts off as Strauss wins the race off the pit lane. Pedal third. McCandless in fourth.
How big is that? Rare are the cases, it seems like, in which strategies like Blake McCandless's actually end up working out. And this is one of those spots where we have to give a call to the man out of Raleigh, North Carolina, who just made it big and came away a big, big winner with pit strategy.
That is exactly what Blake McCandless wanted, needed, and possibly the biggest break that he was going to get on his journey into the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series this season. You talk about Blake McCandless, who is trying to get up to that point, has not had the season that he wanted at all, came in 28th in the point standings, and now is going to be looking and staring right down at a top 5 finish.
Let's talk to Blake McCandless after this strategy. We saw your reaction on screen as soon as that yellow flag came out. How big is this for you, and the way this completely just changed your race and flipped it entirely on its head?
Well, I think you said it perfectly, James. We just, I never found the speed here. We had a really fast out Co Chevrolet, and we just needed more driver. Just couldn't figure this place out. Never had qualifying figured out. And knew that we were going to have to do something. I could, ride back in 35th and, maybe try to get up to 30th, but, I have a 1-point drop right now. I had nothing to lose. So we decided to take the gamble, and unlike what we've had a lot of this year, it's finally a stroke of luck in our direction. So still have to execute, still a long way to go. But we're up front, and that's a good spot to be right now. A lot better than where we were going to be. So just glad to have some luck fall our way.
The other half of this, now that you found a little bit of track position, have you found the speed to go with it? Have you learned things over the first 140 laps that you might be able to apply in these final 30?
Obviously, we test and we do everything we needed to. I think I can maintain up here for sure. I was running a little different to try and save that extra fuel. The fuel window here is about 65 laps, so I was lifting, an ally sign early than pretty much the whole field to try to get those 5 extra laps and then, take the gamble. I know how to run short run here, but I definitely think it's tough to pass here, very narrow racetrack. So I'm hoping that we don't have what happened to us at Phoenix and get wrecked. We just want this to go, after we got this yellow, we want it to go green the rest of the way. So just happy to have a fighting chance now.
Blake, thanks for the time. We'll let you get back to it and lock in that fast out Coast Chevrolet, see if you can get a move towards the front. There's Blake McCandless, who's going to restart in the 4th position in this race as we come inside of 30 laps to go. And this is a completely different event now that we have the yellow flag. Strategy up until this point has completely gone out the window. Track position now is everything. You're racing based off of where you start, and it is effectively a whole new ball game, or maybe a new tune to play to, since we are in the Music City. As the green flag comes back out, Donovan Strauss back on the gas pedal, trying to lock up win number 2 in the Contender Series, and they are already fanning out to maybe 3 wide before we get to turn 1.
Here's the dive into 1 for the entire field. Strauss going to lead the way. How about Caden Honeycutt? Power around the outside. He's going to look for P2. He's going to take P2 as Kyle Peddle now going to have pressure from Brian LaPrade. Blake McCandless trying to go to the inside of LaPrade. Couldn't do it. Reynolds loose in the middle of the pack as LaPrade tries to get around Peddle for 3rd.
Reynolds had to check up to make sure he didn't run over McCandless, and that stacked up everybody behind him. So now Jordy Lopez Jr. going to try and take advantage. Here comes Derek Bordeaux, Femi Olak, Colin Keister. I see Chris Scherber and Alan Bose, Dylan Ault, everybody racing for spots in the back half of the top 10, as everybody at the front half of the top 10 is starting to go single file.
And everyone just wants to migrate down to that bottom side. If you guys stuck on this higher end and can't quite find a hole, including that guy Colin Keister, Femi Olak will now go to the inside of him. Meanwhile, here comes Blake McCandless. McCandless to the inside of Briar LaPrade. And it just takes one guy to get to your inside, and all of a sudden you start to slide on back. So you want to slide back down to that inside as soon as you can. And now we've kind of seen everyone start to settle back in with 25 to go.
McCandless there now down to the bottom and clear, and he goes to 4th. Kyle Peddle back to 5th, and Reynolds in 6th. And now we're starting to see everybody string out like we did once again. Could look like it did earlier in the race, where everybody got to the bottom and then stayed there, because now your first side-by-side battle is with Alan Bose and Chris Scherber, and that's for 11th and 12th on the racetrack, as you see it all happen on the screen.
You can see all the side-by-side that is going on. Everybody looking for last-minute positions. Only 24 laps to go. Time is very much run out for these drivers. It is now or never for these drivers to get the spots. How about Brian Mercurio, P17? You can see him starting to be a little bit stressed out as he races through the middle of the pack, because he wants as many points as he possibly can get from this race. He still has a long way to go before he gets any substantial points. Brian Mercurio comes in 9 points below the cut line, P22. He needs a good day here. Not exactly looking at it right now. If he can get up inside that top 15, maybe that momentum will carry him into a top 10 finish.
Mercurio right on the edge, 22nd in points coming into this evening. Those are numbers we're going to keep track of even more as we carry on through the final 3 races and change of this Contender Series. Here's Brian LaPrade currently running in the 3rd spot, about a 1/10 of a second off the rear bumper of Caden Honeycutt. He is just ahead of him, and he's just sort of tracking, following the tires of Donovan Strauss and Caden Honeycutt, and trying to lock down a good P3 at his home racetrack.
I don't know, we were talking about Parker Renslaff earlier having issues with that right front tire and the damage where he started to fall back like a rock. He's able to recover and be in that 14th position. That car looks like it has speed back in it. So again, another phenomenal recovery for that driver in the 42 team to keep himself in this race and inside the top 15 in what could have been a detrimental day for him in this series. But much like we saw most of this race, Donovan Strauss continuing to gap the field, and as that margin becomes larger and larger, Donovan Strauss, even with that that high temperature, body temperature that is, he's going to start feeling a little better and better and better. Here comes Bladewood to the inside here against the 21.
Big run for Bladewood down to the bottom, and he could use this. 28th in points entering this evening. Alan Bose has a little bit of breathing room, 7th coming into tonight's race. So this is definitely more to Witt's advantage, I would say, than Alan Bose's disadvantage. But Dylan Ault's also right there behind this group just to make things interesting. And as Wood is going to complete the pass out of turn 2, here comes Ault to the inside of Alan Bose, 4th position down the backstretch.
Still on board with Blade Witt as we Now look at him trying to work his, or Dylan Alt now on board with, as he works his way around Alan Bowes in front of him in the number 21. There's a good look at Dylan Alt. As you can see, Blade Witt in front, goes all the way down to the grass, and here comes the move from Alt on Bowes. This is the battle for P12 on the racetrack. Trying to pull him on the inside is Dylan Alt. He's going to do exactly that for the moment, but they're going to stay door to door, stay side by side through turn 3. And now here comes Parker Retzlaff trying to get himself into the party. Devin was just talking about it. Now that 42 starting to come back alive after getting a bit of that damage repaired. Here he comes trying to knock the door down on Bowes and Alt.
We talked a lot about how this caution benefited Blake McCandless, but we did not talk a lot about how this caution also benefited Parker Retzlaff, who had the ability to get that right front fixed up. And now it's not quite perfect, but it's better than what it was, and that could mean the difference between a few spots in this race, which may pay dividends when it comes to the very end of the season.
Exactly. We were looking at earlier when he had that damage. He was about 0.4 of a second off the leader. Right now, he's only about a 10th, and that's in part because he's in traffic, and also in part because, holy cow, Donovan Strauss is a little too fast right now. But as Retzlaff lets that 41 or Brian Mercurio go by, still, if he gets a 15th place position, oh my goodness, how terrible this day could have been, and this team finds a way to get him a top 15 finish, that would be incredible. Meanwhile, on board, looking at Blake Reynolds here, as he sits inside of that 6th position. Kyle Peddle did not have a phenomenal restart, and now Peddle just trying to hold off this man, Blake Reynolds, who's had a phenomenal strategy call and phenomenal race all night long.
Reynolds has just shown a lot of speed, a lot of experience with these cars. He's a man who loves high horsepower and low downforce. And the package that we're running here, these cars, the Class B stock cars, the NASCAR Xfinity Series, perfectly suiting him. Kyle Peddle down to the inside of Blake McCandless. This would be for the 5th spot, or rather the 4th spot, if Peddle can make the pass stick. And then Reynolds potentially there also taking the position. It would bump McCandless back to 6th as they continue to go wheel to wheel through into turn 1.
On board now with McCandless, who off of that very lucky caution was gifted a ton of track position, but with 15 to go, starting to have a little bit of Martinsville syndrome here, as now he's stuck on the outside line, where early on in these runs, that outside line does not look to be the place that these drivers want to be running in, as now Kyle Peddle is going to clear McCandless for 4th, and McCandless is going to be stuck now trying to clamor for a top 5 finish as Reynolds goes back to the bottom.
Reynolds to the inside to clear Blake McCandless. Now, will McCandless get in line in front of Jordy Lopez, or is he going to have to worry about getting freight trained even more? Lopez now down to the bottom to try and block Colin Keister, and that creates the opening that McCandless needed to get back down to the inside. He'll take that. So to 6th goes Blake McCandless, 7th to Jordy Lopez Jr., Colin Keister now to 8th, and it's going to be on Lopez to try and find the hole underneath McCandless's car to wrest away the position. Meanwhile, Donovan Strauss still clear by about half a second ahead of Honeycutt, LaPrade, and then Peddle, and then this group that you see racing for about 4th on back right in front of him.
Yeah, Keister just went out and dropped the elevator shaft to take that 3 wide and ends up picking up at least a little bit of that momentum. And like you said, James, that was fantastic for McCandless, who was able to settle back in and get back to that bottom row. It's just no one can utilize that outside lane right now. It is all inside all the time. On board with Mercurio is now set on his sights. Is the 21 of Alan Bowes. If he can just get to that left rear quarter panel in time, and now the 21 is stuck on the outside, and now he also has a car in a bad spot in front of him. That's the blue number 7 of Blade Witt. So I think that through all these laps, one thing that I learned is that this outside lane just is not usable enough to be able to fight back, even when you have guys at this caliber of a level in the Contender Series.
Blade Witt needing a good finish and potentially getting one. He's been able to keep Dylan Alt at bay, who continues to try and work over Alan Bowes. That's a battle that's raged for about the past 5 laps straight. And Brian Mercurio just sitting behind this group and beginning to climb through the standings ever so slightly. Maybe those few points that might make the difference, and especially in his case, given how close he is to the bubble, could make all the difference in the world at the end of this season, as Donovan Strauss is going to hit the line, and we will reach 10 laps to go at the virtual Nashville Superspeedway. Here's Retzlaff on board, watching all the action just ahead of him.
He's watching it, but he has been able to be a part of it. We talked about Parker Retzlaff trying to get further up into the top 15. He actually fell a couple of positions, now trying to hold on to a top 15. As you see the Hornet's Nest in front of him, that's involving Mercurio, Bose, Alt, Witt, and more. So Retzlaff still has work to do if he wants to get back up towards the front. And with 9 laps to go now this time, James, I don't think Retzlaff's going to have many more opportunities to get up into the top 10 as Howard Bose gets sent into the outside wall.
Bose with the big hit that sends him up into the fence out of turn 4, contact with Dylan Alt, and all of a sudden his race now changes dramatically as he goes from just outside the top 10 to all the way back in 23rd position.
It happens here coming off of 4 down the front straightaway. Remember, this straightaway has 9 degrees of banking still. That blue 40 of Alt slides up the track. And the 21 was hoping that he was going to go down like a regular line, and the 40 car just was up a little bit too far. Miscommunication in different points between drivers, and this is catastrophic for the number 21 team.
Big difference here. Trouble for him. Also of note, I think maybe if I'm seeing something, I wonder if Santiago Gutierrez might have blown the motor. I think he did indeed blow the motor. I see smoke coming out of the back of his number 17 machine. So trouble for Santiago Gutierrez late in this race, who was 20th, the last man in entering this evening. This will likely end up being his drop. We'll keep a note of that, especially as we get later on into the season. But for now, it's Donovan Strauss still in control, ahead of Honeycutt, ahead of LaFrade, ahead of Petal, and ahead of Reynolds, working their way towards 6 laps to go at Nashville.
And with 6 to go, look at the desperation from Parker Retzlaff. A big move to the inside as he tries to get up into the top 10. He can see it in front of him. Blade Witt in that 7 is that driver he needs to get by as we go on board now with Chris Shearburn, that 15th place driver, trying to work his way around Brian Mercurio, and he's going to get a shot from Michael Cozy Jr. behind him in the 99. Everybody getting physical now here late in this race, James. 5 to go this time by, and you can see how stressed out Chris Shearburn is, looking for a top 15 finish and looking to keep up his streak in the top 20 of the standings.
He's been a long-time Coke Series veteran, but you can see it on his face. He's fighting for it now, Devin Henry. I think he knows just how stiff this competition is going to be over the course of the next few weeks. Here's McCandless trying to hold off Jordy Lopez. You got a good run down the back straight, and immediately goes McCandless with the block all the way to the inside of the racetrack, as Lopez will in turn go up high and try and maybe diamond the racetrack to get underneath McCandless out at turn 4. Can he get down there to the bottom, or is McCandless going to back him up just enough? Perfect work there from McCandless to keep Lopez to his outside and make sure that he doesn't give up the preferred racing group.
Hey, someone go tell McCandless that IndyCar hasn't raced here since 2008. Stock cars don't block like that all the way to the apron. Man, talk about dropping the elevator shaft, and still he's having to block this massive group. Lopez now with the run on the outside, and he's still trying to fend off the 18 of Olot. And then on top of him, Colin Keister, he's got himself a rocket in that number 8 machine, nearly banging doors off of turn number 4.
Lopez got the outside and is clear. Keister working the outside and is trying to make something happen. Witt now down to the inside of Femi Olot for position. 3 laps to go here at Nashville as Donovan Strauss is checked out to the tune of 1.2 seconds. He's clear of everybody up front. This is where the battle is.
Jordy being told, run for your life now as McCandless trying to hold on to as many positions as he can. But here comes Blade Witt to the outside. Here comes Femi Olot now to go door to door with McCandless. 2 to go this time by. And a lot of drivers now trying to power around the outside line. It's starting to come into play. About 30 laps on everybody's tires. And it looks like McCandless might have burned him up a little bit too quick. He goes to the edge of the top 10. As Blade Witt goes around him for P9.
How much more can you hang on to, and how much can every spot make a difference here at Nashville? You see a block there from another one of the Logitech Gialtis esports machines as this group continues to fight. Donovan Strauss comes out of turn number 4 to take the white flag at Nashville.
Last-ditch effort for everyone. That top 6 all spread out, but here comes the Hornets Nest inside the top 10. Every point matters here for every one of these drivers halfway through the season.
Donovan Strauss, you heard about it earlier this evening, fighting a fever of over 100 degrees, dealing with illness all day today, didn't get any sort of sleep, and just like a certain basketball player back in 1997, Donovan Strauss is going to come across the line and get it done in the most improbable of fashions and win round number 4 of the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series from the virtual Nashville Superspeedway. He becomes the first two-time winner of the season for Space Station Gaming, and now puts one foot into the 2022 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. He's not quite there yet, but this is a very, very, very large step towards that goal.
An absolutely perfect race. Started on the pole, led, I believe, if not every lap, very close to every lap, and on top of that, finishes and wins the race. Unbelievable night for Donovan Strauss. This is what he needed and what he wanted. 2 in a row. First driver this season to have 2 wins in this campaign. An absolutely fantastic run for Donovan Strauss.
He very much now looks like the eNASCAR qualifying iRacing Series champion we thought he might be in this Contender Series. And I think now, Devin Henry, you really can start making the argument that he might just be the fastest man week in, week out, and the one driver that regardless of where he's running in the race, you have to worry about what Donovan Strauss may or may not be able to do, because these last few weeks he has been lightning quick. It's been liftoff from the rest of this field for the Space Station Gaming drive.
And it is the big mo, ladies and gents. You want to have that momentum as we are in the second half of the season now. A performance like this, absolutely immaculate and incredible. This might propel him to do some big things before the next Coke season, if that's the trajectory that he might just be on right now.
And we can't say it's done yet, but we can tell you that Donovan Strauss is the first two-time winner in this 2021 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series. Gets it done at Nashville by 1.4 seconds over Caden Honeycutt. Brian LaPrade came home third this evening, and fourth went to Kyle Peddle. Blake Reynolds with a top 5. Jordy Lopez finished 6th in a sorely needed good run for Logitech G Altus Esports. Colin Keister brings it home 7th. Femi Olot was 8th. Blade Witt with another good run that was desperately needed. He came on 9th, and Derek Bordeaux completed the top 10, Josh.
P11 gonna go to Blake McCandless, barely missing out on a top 10 finish. Dylan Alt, Parker Retzlaff with a bit of a disappointing P13 for that team. Chris Shearburn, Brian Mercurio gonna round out the top 15 with Malik Ray, Derek Justice, Seth DeMerchant, Liam Brotherton, and Michael Cozy Jr. rounding out the top 20.
Colin Bowden will be in 21st, Casey Tucker in 22nd, Nicholas Shelton in P23, Zach Nichols in 24th, Anthony Burrows will finish P25, Garrett Lowe in 26th, Brandon McKissick 27th, 28th place for a disappointing day for Taylor Hurst, 29th goes to Christian Peterson, and then Jake Nichols rounds out the top 30.
Alan Bowes finished 31st this evening. 32nd went to Cody Bias. Ryan Doucette brought his car home in 33rd. Santiago Tires finished in 34th. Jake Matheson, 35th this evening. 36th went to Daniel Everhart. Ashton Crowner and Brad Davies complete this 38-car field as we now bring in our race winner for the second event in a row and the first two-time winner of this 2021 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series out of Marietta, Georgia for Space Station Gaming, Donovan Strauss. And Donovan, first thing, for those who haven't been aware, we talked about the story over the course of our broadcast, but from you, let's get the story on just how the last 24 hours or so have been for you. How have you been feeling?
Yeah, so I went to sleep last night. I was perfectly fine. I didn't eat anything bad, and I woke up at like 3:45 this morning, and I threw up like 3 times, and I felt absolutely miserable. It felt like I was 180 degrees. And I woke up, I was still not feeling well, but I took care of myself all day and stayed hydrated, and I don't even know. I don't know how that's possible, but I just took care of myself, and I mean I sweat a lot that race. I'm racing with a 101 degree fever, but we're holding on. I don't even know what to say. Like I've had a lot going on recently, and this is just like emotional, honestly. Like I'm just, I don't know.
So then we made comparisons during the broadcast to a certain flu game. I figure those comparisons are probably pretty accurate.
Yeah, I mean, I qualified on the pole, led the most laps. We put it all together. That was an MJ performance right there. That was awesome.
How does this win move the needle for you in terms of your own perception of where you sit in this series? The first win, I felt like really cemented your place. Now that you've got two and you're the only one with two, where does that put you in comparison to the rest of the field in your own mind?
I don't know. I didn't expect this to be the case when I got back in. Like I thought I'd run good and hopefully have a shot at making it, but I didn't expect this at all. And I like when I got on the sim in 2019, I could not have imagined being here and in this position to make it to the top. And I've learned a lot, and I've hopefully matured a lot to a lot of people in the last year and shown I can do this and put in the time. And it's just insane because I got a lot going on, and I can't thank Boyd and Chris and Dave and Vicente and everybody for having my back while I've been doing my thing and taking my time, and it's just awesome.
I think best thing we could do, given your situation, is let you get some rest. So, Donovan, we'll make sure to let you go here. But thanks, as always, for the time. Congratulations on win number 2. And most importantly, feel better. Best wishes, and hope you get better and feel better soon.
Oh, real quick, thank you to Space Station Gaming, Steel Series champion, Oats Overnight, Legacy, everybody there for all the hard work on the car and helping me out. JD, this is just awesome to go back to back, and I don't want to stop here. I want to go as far as we can, and that's going to be the plan.
Donovan Strauss gets the virtual guitar in victory lane and gets it done as your winner in this 4th round of the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series. Runner-up this evening, Caden Honeycutt out of Aledo, Texas, who is now with our Josh Lee.
And another great run for you, Caden, and another great finish of P2, continuing a string of great finishes. How did that race feel from your perspective?
Well, I thought the race went a lot better than I expected. I was a little bit farther off than some of my teammates in practice the whole week. I was gone for a couple of days, and I kind of lost a little bit of speed. So we were fighting back. I really didn't expect to have this finish, but man, Don was on another zip code. He was really good tonight. Congrats to him. He deserved it. If only people understood what's going on this week, what he's gone through, and I'm really so hyped for him. It was a good run. But for us, we had a phenomenal run. You know, P2 is something not to complain about, especially when your teammates are running right with each other. So we had a good race tonight, and hopefully we can move on to Dover and have the same result.
P2 without the drop, P3 with the drop. So either way, you're comfortably into the top 20. 3 races, remaining on the campaign. What are you focused on in these last 3 races? Is it still getting consistent finishes, or is it just kind of trying to just finish every race and walk away top 20, make it into the Coke Series for 2022?
Well, I really think that you gotta play your cards the right way. You know, you gotta understand the situation that you're in, and whatever goes on in the race, you got to make the most out of. But you definitely need to be points racing the rest of these races. Now we're in a really good position next race or 2 to be able to be locked into the Coke Series, which I think that's the goal. I think these next couple of races we need to definitely make the most out of every race. These next 2, I feel like we can lock ourselves in. Going into the last race, you know, just weight lifted off our shoulders, no stress, just go in the last race and have fun and learn some more things. But yeah, definitely need to be points racing these last couple races, no doubt.
And speaking of that next race at the Dover International Raceway, how are you and the Legacy Esports team feeling about that one in 1 week's time?
Well, we are really excited for Dover. We already got a base going. We ran some Be Open stuff this week. I also ran some myself, turning laps, since I'll be gone from literally Wednesday morning all the way to Monday. So I'll be showing up on race day with pretty much a very minimal laps. So we have a really good piece going into the Dover. Everybody on our team loves Dover. Especially my crew chief tonight, Dave Siltman, and also Boyd and Donnie. So we're really excited for Dover. I just can't thank all my sponsors, Friends of Jacqueline, Solid Rock Carriers, Autos by Nelson, Blackstone, AC Avalanche, Champion Power Equipment, Curb Records, and everybody that puts on the broadcast, and everybody that helps out on the team. I just can't thank everybody enough. And Boyd and Donnie do a lot of work, and nobody understands how much work they put into it. I really appreciate these guys a lot.
And thank you for joining us up here in the broadcast booth, James. That's Caden Honeycutt, a great second place finish from him. We're hearing the confidence that Legacy Esports machine has for Dover. We'll see what he can do next week.
Toledo, Texas, to not terribly far away from Nashville Superspeedway. The hometown driver, Brian LaPrade, brings it home for P3 for Lockdown Racing, and he is with our Devin Henry.
The home state star puts it on the podium. Okay, I know that you wanted to be P1 here at Nashville. You got the shirt. You got the party atmosphere probably too. But podium's still a big deal. What does it mean to you? Granted, it's at the virtual home track, but what does it mean to be able to get a podium at this home track?
Oh, man, it feels wonderful. Obviously, yeah, wanted to win, but just couldn't get it. Legacy cars, they got some crazy mid-run speed. I just couldn't keep up. We're missing that. I was honestly very worried about that restart there. I was comfortable just finishing out that race and just collecting some points and moving on. But that restart actually helped us out a little bit more, so didn't mind it. Just put on some pressure that just got to learn to take the pressure and figure it out. So I did that and ended up P3. But yeah, super happy to finish third here. Track means a lot to me. 40 minutes up the road from me. First race I ever went to with my dad, so that was a fun time, cool memory. It's what got me hooked. So just thankful for them, my parents, for letting me do this and enjoying my time on this and making the most out of it.
And you mentioned that this was your favorite track on the schedule, and I'm sure in part because of all the great memories and this being your home track. But what exactly works for you here at Nashville, even besides some of the thoughtfulness, the home trackness of it? Why is this your favorite track, and what works for you here?
Definitely just being able to quote-unquote catfish, as Jimmy Mullis would say. I learned from him. Just being low and slow, it's the thing that really helps you get around here, and it works out for me. It's similar to driving it like Homestead, just trying to be lower than the car in front of you. That's what works for me. Just being able to get in a rhythm and hook onto the very bottom and get it going. It's just, you got to get in rhythm, and it's very easy to make a mistake here. Just hitting the apron or something, it's hard to be consistent here, and I think that definitely helps, just being able to get in a rhythm for me personally here. But yeah, just love this track. It means a lot to me. Just super happy to finish third.
And you extend your lead above the cut line now, headed into the final three races of the year. What is the mindset like with that Lockdown Racing number 35 team going into these final races to get into the Coke Series?
Yeah, just making sure our Ledford Billiard Supply Ford Mustang gets some points and just keeps going. We've been doing great all year long. Just need to keep doing what I'm doing. I got it figured out, I think, and just make sure nothing crazy happens at the end of these three races, and should hopefully see ourselves in a Coke Series as long as nothing bad happens. But yeah, just real quick, want to thank my sponsors, though. Ledford Billiard Supply. Check them out at ledfordbilliardsupply.com. Flat Out Racing Network. Sim Seats. Thank you so much to Sim Seats. I'm in wonderful Sim Seats rig right now. They hooked me up with a triple monitor stand. So shout out to Zach over there at Sim Seats. McConey Setup Shop. JDR Graphics. And yeah, just everyone at Lockdown Racing. Anthony Alfredo as well. But yeah, shout out to my crew. Zach Novak, Logan Sheets, Jordan Churchill. They keep me going every week and keep my head straight and keep me going and putting on a good show for the fans to watch and keeping the results up.
Brian LaPrade wear that t-shirt proudly, taking home a third place finish here at his home state track.
What a night for your top three, and a lot of storylines you could take out of this for sure. You think of the pit strategy playing off for Blake McCandless, and I would argue effectively saving his Contender Series campaign up to this point. You think of Breyer, who puts together the big run here on home turf, but if that first win made Donovan Strauss turn the heads of everybody, this has got to be something next level. This is beyond stratospheric and off closer to the moon for the Space Station Gaming driver, Josh.
And he's talked about how much that he's been maturing over his time on the iRacing service and going through Road to Pro this year. So great to see all that hard work that Donovan has put into this campaign really work. And it's working insanely well for Strauss now. And if he does not make it into the Coca-Cola Series next year, I think it's going to be one of the largest disappointments in all of Contender history. His work is not done. He has 2 wins. Even with the drop, he is in first in the point standings, but his work is not done. He still needs to put together 3 good races, because if he ends up needing to use one of the next 3 races as a drop, he's going to have 3 points go up as a non-drop, which is going to hurt him in the point standings.
It is not over. Just looking at the math here, if you were to try and look at realistically locking a place into the Coke Series for next year after Dover next week, you'd need to be somewhere in the ballpark, I believe, of 80 points clear of the 20th place driver. Right now, Donovan Strauss is 53 points clear. So we probably aren't going to see anybody clinch next week. But for your top few drivers, your Strausses, your Keisters, your Honeycutts, that group, Devin, we could see them potentially lock up a spot in the Coke Series by the time Darlington is over in 2 weeks' time.
But it's simple, James. You look, tell me who is clinched. Right now, who's clinched? Nobody. Nobody's safe, and nobody should feel comfortable. The season is too short for any form of comfortness when you attack the Contender Series. And it's not like, Dover is chaotic, Darlington is chaotic. Anything can happen, anything will happen, and these drivers have a lot at stake trying to make that Coke Series.
And we will be back 1 week from tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Tuesday, December 7th, 2021, from Dover International Speedway. We are going to get after it on the high banks of the Monster Mile, another concrete track, but a very different animal from this. Should be a lot of fun to see how that plays out. We also should not forget what Donovan Strauss has done here tonight. One of the most impressive runs I've seen in a long, long time on iRacing, to come through with the fever, with the bug, and still pull out the second win to be the first multiple-time winner in the 2021 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series. A reminder that if you head to iRacing.com/Black Friday, you get 25% off of an account renewal and 50% off of new memberships when you go visit that today. And head there quickly, because that deal ends soon. But time for us to say good evening from the virtual Music City for the team at iRacing that makes it happen. Tyler Hudson, Drew Adamson, Sean Ambrose, Cisco Scamuva, and Corey Vervinch. For our team at Podium Esports, John Theodore, Gary Sexton, track camera builder Dougie Beard, all the folks at Video Ninja that helped bring you the cams you see tonight, and for the folks on the broadcast tonight, Ryan Bauer, our producer, and our team down on pit road and in the booth, Justin Prince, Devin Henry, and Josh Lee. I am James Pike, the voice of Podium Esports. Thank you so much for watching our coverage of the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series. We'll see you in Dover next Tuesday night.
to do it, I can't be afraid now. Put me on the stage now, I'm ready to rage now. I feel like an animal stuck in a cage and I'm ready to break out. My time, my time.